Hi, this is Jen Rubin, and this is Jen Rubin's Green Room. Wow, what a week. I could watch that debate over and over and over again. I think there's virtual unanimous consensus, aside from the Trump cult members, that Kamala Harris not only won the debate, but really destroyed and deconstructed Donald Trump, who is still whining that it was rigged, the election, and the moderators aren't fair. The format wasn't what he wanted, even though it was, that he really won. And then he goes back to relitigating his rally sizes. He goes back to claiming without any basis in fact that Haitians are stealing and eating pets. This is fascist stuff. When you make up a bold-faced lie, verging on a blood libel about a specific minority group, you are engaging in fascist targeting. And lo and behold, what happens? But we now have bomb threats in schools with heavy Haitian populations in Springfield, Ohio, and elsewhere. Not surprising, we have families that are afraid to send their kids to school. This is what fascists do. They dehumanize and target minority groups with the implicit suggestion that others do them harm. So Trump himself and others associated with him don't directly have to harass these people and threaten them. They get their troops to do it. That's what fascism is. And it's deplorable. And those politicians and those pundits and those pseudo-journalists who continue to defend him and think up reasons why Harris is unqualified or can't be seriously considered are enabling this reprehensible conduct. So what about Harris? She went to North Carolina yesterday and had two mammoth rallies in which the crowd was over the top enthusiastic. She is making North Carolina a critical part of her election. And if she wins there, mark my words, she will be the next president of the United States. Why is North Carolina so important? Well, for starters, it comes early in election night. Their polls close at 7:30. They are allowed to begin processing the votes well before Election Day. So we're not likely to have a very extended voting process the way we do in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. And she has a small lead there, according to the last polls. And the governor, who is currently Roy Cooper, and the attorney general, who is Josh Stein, are both Democrats, so don't expect any cheating on Trump's behalf. And Josh Stein, who is now running for governor, is up against a MAGA kook, Mark Robinson. He's like 20 points ahead because Robinson is a absolute nutcase. He calls for some people deserve to be killed. He traffics in the most reprehensible conspiracy theories. He wants an abortion ban from 0 weeks. He's going to lose by a mile. And that's important not only because North Carolina needs a Democratic governor, but because of what that does to the Republican turnout. People may stay home. They're not enthusiastic about turning out for Mark Robinson, but Democrats are enthusiastic. And Harris knows it. And she's putting resources and spending time in North Carolina, and it may well pay off. You know, what's very interesting is that the electorate is not the same electorate it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and certainly when Joe Biden was president. What's happened? There's been a spike in registration among Democrats, among Blacks, among women. Why? Because the debate was inspirational and because Taylor Swift weighed in. And that means hundreds of thousands of people across the country are likely to vote who were not likely to vote a week ago. That's big when you have relatively small margins in these swing states. So consider this. If she wins in North Carolina early in the evening, and Pennsylvania looks like it's going strong. Michigan weighs in. Wisconsin. That's the whole ball of wax. You've heard a lot about Republican vote tampering, vote suppression shenanigans in Arizona and Georgia. It may not matter, because if she withholds the onslaught in the blue wall states and wins North Carolina, that's the whole ball of wax. And what's more, an early evening win in North Carolina is going to reverberate throughout the country. Republicans are going to be depressed and are less likely to turn out in places like Arizona, Nevada. So it's very important what happens in North Carolina. And it's remarkable that at this stage in the game, Republicans do not have North Carolina sewed up. After all, they've won that state in every election since 2008, and now it's slipping through their grasp. That's, I think, a microcosm of what is happening. The map is expanding for Kamala Harris. It's shrinking for Donald Trump, because he was whooped in that debate, because people can now see for themselves and with their own eyes that he's a weak nutcase, and that she has presented herself in a way that gives people reassurance. You know, there's lots of reasons, if you want to make excuses, not to vote for Kamala Harris. But it's not going to be because she doesn't have policies. She does. It's not going to be because she isn't reaching out to moderates. She is. It's not going to be because she's some dove on foreign policy. She's far more hawkish than Donald Trump. You heard him in the debate. He wouldn't even say he wanted Ukraine to win the war. What's that all about? Well, that's Putin and his ability to be manipulated by strongmen around the world. So these people who are supposedly on the fence are running out of excuses. Now, I do want to talk about these so-called undecided voters. You know, those people who tell us, oh gosh, I just need more information. I got to tell you, first of all, I doubt whether there are that many undecided people, because really, how can you be undecided between these two people? They could not be more different. If you're going to be a nut and you're going to excuse all this racism, you're going to convince yourself that Trump is sane, fine. Then you're in his camp. And if you're not, there's no other candidate to vote for. So who is actually undecided? I suspect these are very low information voters, voters who frankly don't need more information. It's not the lack of detail on her housing policy that's keeping them from voting. Maybe these are Republicans who are embarrassed now to say they're voting for Trump, or maybe these are people who never vote anyway. But the media makes a fetish of these people, interviews them, elevates them, because that means the race is still up in the air. There are all these undecided people. Who's going to win these people? And of course, by making these people the central focus of their coverage, it allows them to say, well, Kamala Harris hasn't closed the deal yet. Look, she hasn't convinced these people. Oh, please. I don't think there are that many undecided people. And if there are, they're probably not going to vote anyway. And there's no amount of information that's going to make them change their mind. So let's get real. There are less than 8 weeks to go before the election. This is now a turnout election. Republicans, whether it's Alberto Gonzalez or whether it's Liz and Dick Cheney, who have an ounce of patriotism, have come out and supported her. She has gotten the full support of the Democratic Party. She's reached out to independents. So now it's a matter of turning everyone out. That is why you are going to see such a horrific, illegal, and constitutional effort from Republicans to block people from voting, to delay certification of voting, to throw up barriers to voting, because they are desperate. They're desperate because they're going to lose, and they may lose a lot down ballot. And remember what's at stake for Donald Trump. It's not just this election. It's not just winning back the White House. If he loses, he's going to jail. He gets sentenced in New York. His January 6th trial goes forward. And you really think he's going to get off? I don't. I don't think a Washington, D.C. jury is going to let him go. Well, you say, oh, the Supreme Court will rescue him. Well, maybe, maybe not. If he's going to trial, it means he hasn't won the presidency, and the court really has no interest in bailing him out. So this is all the marbles for Donald Trump. This is not only his return to power, his ego, recapturing his sense of being a winner. This is about staying out of jail. No wonder he's desperate. And again, I wouldn't mind in the least if election night he zipped off to Venezuela or Saudi Arabia or Russia. I just want him gone. I want him out of the country, out of our bloodstream. Because as soon as that happens, then the battle is not over, but the process begins of returning to a normal political system. Then Republicans can find anyone with a spine to begin to rebuild a party that has become a fascist cult of personality. That can't happen until he is gone. But once he is, then it begins. And if it isn't close, they can't cheat and they can't claim, oh, we almost did it, or we just lost because Donald Trump wasn't the best candidate. A resounding defeat means that this entire foray into fascism, nationalism, conspiratorial fantasy has been a disaster. And it's only when that happens that they will change their ways. It's only when that happens that they will begin to return to the normal process of actually putting forth policy proposals, seeking out voters, rather than engaging in performance politics and fear and race mongering. But I will say this. Once the election is behind us, if Democrats do capture the White House, if they somehow manage to hang on to the Senate and they win the House, the filibuster has got to go. And that's because we need fundamental democratic lowercase d reform. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We need to pass the reauthorization of the preclearance for voting. We need to make sure that we have nonpartisan redistricting. And we need fundamental court reform because the Supreme Court is corrupt. It's interesting. You even had Associate Justice Elena Kagan out publicly calling for a mandatory ethics code to be enforced, she suggests, by lower court judges, which I think is fine. I think it would also be fine to have former or retired judges. Perhaps Stephen Breyer, who retired from the Supreme Court, would like to head up such a body. We have to have ethics reform, but the court itself is corrupt. New poll out showing overwhelming support for term limits on justices. That would be a start. Frankly, I would be in favor of expanding the court. But regardless, you have to have those fundamental reforms, and you're not going to get them unless you're willing to dump the filibuster. So Democrats, if they win the trifecta, had better be ready to govern and to put up some guardrails for democracy so we don't in the future face another totalitarian threat. That includes statehood for Washington, D.C. That includes a uniform system of early voting. That includes these court reforms. In other words, when and if they gain power, Democrats have to use it the way Republicans do. It doesn't matter how wide or narrow the margin is. They have a mandate to govern. And moreover, they have a responsibility to make sure there is no room in American politics for a fascist, authoritarian movement. That will be their obligation if elected. And I don't think Kamala Harris is going to be reticent to do it. And frankly, I think the Democratic Party will push the rest of them in the House and the Senate to go forward and act, because we can't go through this every 4 years. We can't have election after election in which the fate of American democracy hangs by a thread. So things are looking better now. It doesn't mean that this is in the bag. The margin of victory matters tremendously. So that's why she's working so hard, and that's why all of you have to work so hard. You want to volunteer, you want to register, make sure everyone you know is registered, and make sure people turn out to vote. Because nothing less than the future of American democracy depends upon it. So if you like this program, you like our other programs, click right there and tell your friends, your loved ones, they can find us anywhere they get their podcasts. Bye-bye.